Hello guys, this is Real Recaps. In this video, I will talk about a 2023 Australian horror thriller film, You'll Never Find Me. Before we start, I hope you will like and subscribe to the channel. An elderly man named Patrick sits alone in his trailer late at night, listening to the radio with a small glass of liquor on the table. A romantic song plays, triggering memories of a young woman peering into his car through the rain outside the trailer. Thunder rumbles as a heavy rainstorm begins, mirroring the scene in his mind. Patrick glances at a vial of clear liquid but sets it aside. Lightning flashes as a loud knock sounds at the door. Patrick nervously looks toward the door and tells the stranger to go away, but the knocking continues. A moment later, a woman's voice bleats from outside, asking to be let in. Patrick hesitates before opening the door to reveal a rain-soaked young woman asking for a ride to town. After a brief glance around his decluttered kitchen, he steps aside and opens the door wider. The woman, drenched and shivering, declines the towel Patrick offers, insisting she only needs transportation. When Patrick explains that his car is broken and buses are no longer running at this hour, she becomes visibly disheartened. Apologizing for his delayed response, Patrick explains that local kids often prank him by knocking on his door and running away. The woman notices a glass on his table, while Patrick suggests she remove her wet sweater to let it dry. She refuses, stating she won't stay long and asks to use the phone instead. Patrick seems to ignore her request and questions her claim of swimming at the beach. He glances at her bare, muddy feet in confusion. The beach is far away. He invites her to sit down, suggesting she rest, and reluctantly, she agrees. Patrick offers tea, but she declines, expressing a preference for a cigarette, which Patrick doesn't have. Despite her refusal, he places a cup of tea in front of her. The woman asks again about calling a taxi, explaining she's staying nearby but unwilling to walk in the storm. Patrick quickly deduces she's not from the area. He notes that swimming season ended long ago due to the cold, and storms like this only occur in summer. He offers her alcohol instead, but she insists on using a phone. Patrick hands her some coins, explaining he doesn't own a mobile phone and she'd have to find a payphone located beyond the locked park gates. He comments on the peculiar nature of the locals, who are often fearful, much like himself. The woman thanks him for his help and begins to leave, but Patrick warns that she'll need to wait for the park to reopen. Reluctantly, she agrees to stay, allowing her clothes to dry. As she moves around the room, she begins asking questions, which Patrick answers thoughtfully. He shares how he grew up by the coast before moving to the city in his 20s. The woman examines feminine items on a dresser, including a small watch, and admits she's unemployed and unlucky. Patrick, however, disagrees with her outlook, revealing he was an electrician until a severe accident with a light socket made him quit. Afterward, he found routine work uninspiring. Reflecting on human nature, he observes that people often crave danger, seeking thrills through risky activities like skydiving. While Patrick continues, the woman finds a locket containing a lock of hair. Patrick's musings shift to questioning her story. Her vague responses heighten his suspicion, especially when she claims she's never been to the area before. Yet, Patrick finds her face eerily familiar. Taking the locket from her, he suggests she warm up with a shower. She hesitates but eventually agrees. In the bathroom, she studies herself in the mirror and fiddles with an earring before stepping under the shower. To her horror, the water streaming down her body turns muddy and streaked with blood, spiraling into the drain. Panicked, she hears Patrick knocking on the door to bring her a towel. When she checks her reflection again, her forehead is clean, and there's no sign of injury. Meanwhile, Patrick heats soup on the stove and offers her a dry sweater, explaining it belonged to an ex-girlfriend. He reassures her he's single and she can keep the sweater. The woman admits she's also alone, describing herself as someone who regrets seeking danger. Patrick, pouring thick red soup into a bowl, is intrigued by her self-awareness, commenting that most women tend to blame others for their mistakes. The woman suddenly confesses she regretted staying late at work to lock the gates. Alarmed, Patrick notices her earring and grows uneasy. While he rinses the pot, she moves to the couch with the soup but doesn't eat it. Instead, she asks about Patrick's nighttime activities. He admits to suffering from insomnia, describing how aging brings restless nights filled with nightmares that blur into reality. As he cleans the pot, he watches the water turn red and thick like blood, reflecting on the nature of fear and the longing for innocent childhood dreams. Lightning flashes, and the woman abruptly questions how she entered if the park gates were locked. Patrick is curious too. Suddenly, there's another knock at the door. When Patrick asks if anyone knew she was coming, the woman looks confused, insisting she didn't tell anyone. Patrick opens the door to find no one there. Rain pours, and thunder crashes as he steps back to the sink. The woman, recalling that he locked the door earlier, watches him warily. Patrick retrieves a vial and studies it discreetly while she notices his boots near the couch. Seizing an opportunity, she pours her uneaten soup into them. The power suddenly goes out, plunging the trailer into darkness. Patrick lights a flashlight and scans the ceiling, speculating a tree might have fallen on the power lines. He tells the woman she'll have to stay longer and goes to check outside. The woman, feeling embarrassed by her growing paranoia, offers to help. Patrick reassures her she's free to leave at any time and heads to the circuit breaker, flashlight in hand. She follows him, illuminating the way. At the relay box, Patrick shares a childhood memory of being terrified of his father during a blackout. While helping, the woman notices blood on a hammer in the toolbox. When she shines the flashlight on it again, the hammer appears clean. She also spots bleeding scratches on Patrick's back and offers to fetch first aid supplies from the bathroom. In the bathroom, she rifles through the cabinet, finding a vial containing her other earring among various women's belongings. Overwhelmed with fear, she accidentally drops the earring down the drain. As panic sets in, she senses someone lying behind the shower curtain. Desperate, she yanks it back, only to find the tub empty. While Patrick drifted into a memory of his wrench car, the woman emerged from the bathroom, declaring her intent to leave. Patrick tried to dissuade her, urging her to wait out the storm and inviting her to play cards. He admitted he only knew one game, I doubt it. The woman, however, confronted him, demanding to know why he had her earring. Offended, Patrick accused her of snooping where she shouldn't have. She insisted she was merely trying to make sense of the situation, and now, resolutely, she asked for the key to leave and go home. Patrick, perplexed, questioned what had frightened her so much. What had he done wrong? He reminded her that he had let her in, provided her warmth, and offered her drinks, only to be repaid with accusations. He lamented that women always did this, entering his life only to disrupt it. "What are you even doing here?" he demanded. The woman raised her voice, repeating her demand for the key, but Patrick calmly informed her that the door wasn't locked. Embarrassed, she tested the door and found it indeed unlocked. Realizing her outburst was baseless, she decided to stay. Patrick began dealing cards for I doubt it, joking that she could pour alcohol into his sneakers if she wanted. For the first time that night, the woman smiled. Patrick studied her face again, wondering why it seemed familiar. She speculated that as people age, the women they've known start to blur together, sharing similar struggles and running from something. As they played, Patrick shared humorous stories about his neighbors near the park's entrance. In return, the woman admitted she had been hiding from her own flaws and reality, confessing she'd been drinking at a bar before the storm. Patrick recalled her earlier mention of the beach but, in the spirit of the game, doubted her story. He then confessed he had lied about the sweater and shared how he met his late wife at a gas station. She had asked him to buy her a bag of chips, and at first, he thought she was homeless. But she was well dressed, with beautifully clean hair. He bought her the chips, and they sat eating together in silence. She later died of an overdose. Patrick admitted no one had entered his home in a long time and said her presence made him feel alive. He poured her another drink, but as she lifted the glass, she noticed a lipstick stain on the rim, reigniting her suspicions. The storm intensified, and Patrick stepped outside. Alone, the woman heard a phone vibrating. She followed the sound to a back room, where she found a phone lying on the bed next to the lifeless body of a woman under the sheets. Terrified, she planned to escape through a small window in the storage room, intending to break it with a hammer she had earlier thought was covered in blood. When she picked it up again, it appeared bloody once more. Realizing her only exit was the front door, she stepped out of the storage room and ran directly into Patrick, who captured and tied her up. Patrick forced her mouth open and made her drink a mysterious liquid. She struggled, but he dragged her into the bedroom, throwing her onto the bed beside the corpse. As she desperately worked to free her hands and considered the small window as an escape, Patrick began to monologue. He recounted how the dead woman on the bed had asked for chips and willingly entered his car. Then he turned to her. What had she expected, showing up at a stranger's house in the middle of the night? It wasn't fate, he argued, but choices. The woman felt herself losing consciousness as Patrick confessed that the liquid he had given her was a banned substance that would soon kill her. He shared the story of his first murder, a woman who had approached him during a storm on the beach, asking for a ride. He could still vividly remember the tattoo on her ribs, though her face had faded from memory. Sin, he declared, was a myth. There was no God, only a conscience that could be silenced. As the woman passed out, Patrick covered her face, waiting for her to die. His mind wandered back to the stormy beach. Suddenly, he noticed a tattoo on her chest, realizing with mounting horror that she was the same woman he had killed years ago. Patrick was thrust into a nightmare, surrounded by the women he had murdered. They filled his house, laughing, drinking, and bathing, mocking him. Darkness consumed him, and he heard the sound of his father's ventilator, a noise that had haunted him as a child. Emerging from the nightmare, drenched in blood and terror, Patrick found himself surrounded by his victims. The sound of police knocking at the door grew louder. His most recent victim stepped from the shadows, forcing him to pour the vial's contents into a bottle and drink it. The other women laughed at him, driving him to madness. Then, everything stopped. Patrick opened his eyes to find no storm, no woman, only silence. Everything had been a hallucination. The door knocked again, and when he opened it, he saw kids running away. He pulled an empty vial from his pocket and laughed bitterly, realizing he had consumed the substance himself in his delirium. Returning inside, he locked the door. Moments later, a heavy thud echoed through the trailer, the sound of Patrick's body hitting the floor. The end. Thanks for watching.